Officer, she's photographing the utility covers again. I want her removed from here immediately. Before Frank Callahan could lower his phone, Maya Williams slipped the air quality monitor into her bag, straightened her back, and walked toward him. Mr. Callahan, this street is not your private police station. Maya cut in, her voice cool but commanding. Frank frowned and adjusted the old windbreaker, bearing a Cedar Grove Police Department badge, deliberately using it to exert pressure. You moved here only 6 days ago, yet you keep inspecting the underground utility system. As a former captain, I have a responsibility to report anything unusual. Are you reporting something unusual, or are you abusing your former authority to harass someone? Maya stopped 2 steps away from Frank and looked him directly in the eyes. Taking photographs in a public space is completely legal. You're inventing a threat simply because this neighborhood no longer operates under your command. Frank stepped closer, deliberately using his height to intimidate her. Don't try to argue the law with me. In Pinebrook Heights, I know exactly who poses a danger. The only danger here is your deliberate refusal to face reality. Maya replied without the slightest hesitation. Even your dog recognizes danger better than you do. Ranger stood beside Frank but kept looking toward the utility cover near the eastern sidewalk. The retired German Shepherd lowered his head and sniffed the air before pulling against his leash. Frank tightened his grip. Leave the dog out of this. A marked police SUV stopped at the curb. Officer Ethan Cole stepped out and approached Frank first. Morning, Captain, dispatch said. There was possible interference with a utility line. Frank pointed toward Maya. She has been photographing the covers and using some kind of electronic device near the ground. She refuses to explain what she's doing. Cole turned to Maya. Ma'am, may I see the device? It's an air quality monitor, Maya said. I have not opened the utility cover, damaged public property, or entered a restricted area. Did you touch the cover? No. Did you put anything inside it? No. Cole looked at the sidewalk. Then why are you checking it? Because there are signs of a possible underground problem. The grass near this section is discolored, the pavement has settled, and the dog reacts to the same location whenever the wind comes from the east. Frank shook his head. Ranger reacts because she keeps coming around here with that equipment. Maya looked at Cole. This is a public sidewalk within a utility easement. Unless Mr. Callahan reported an actual crime, there is no legal basis to remove me. Cole glanced at Frank. Did you see her open the cover or damage anything? I saw suspicious behavior. That wasn't the question, Maya said. Frank's jaw tightened. I spent 30 years recognizing trouble before it became a crime. And you retired 4 years ago, Maya replied. Your experience does not allow you to replace evidence with suspicion. Cole raised one hand to prevent the argument from continuing. There's no violation here. Miss Williams can photograph public infrastructure as long as she doesn't interfere with it. Frank stared at him. You're taking her word over mine? I'm looking at what happened, Captain. Maya noticed the title. Frank no longer held command, yet Cole still addressed him as if he did. She also noticed how quickly the officer had arrived for a complaint involving no immediate danger. She opened her notebook and wrote down the time. Cole watched her. Are you documenting this? Yes. Frank gave a dismissive laugh. She documents everything. That usually matters when people tell different versions of the same event, Maya said. 6 days earlier, Maya had arrived at 1842 Magnolia Crest Drive in a gray Volvo. She had moved from Washington, D.C., and introduced herself as a public safety compliance consultant. That description was accurate, although it did not explain the locked equipment cases, the utility maps, or the secure phone she kept out of sight. Frank lived next door at 1844. He had been sitting on his porch when she began unloading her belongings. He crossed the lawn after watching her carry 2 cases into the house. You're the new owner? He asked. Yes. Maya Williams. Frank Callahan. Retired captain. Cedar Grove Police Department. He waited as though his former title required a different response. Maya offered a polite nod. Good to meet you. You living here alone? I am. What kind of work do you do? Public safety compliance. For the city? I work with organizations that need regulatory reviews. Frank looked toward the cases near her door. What's in those? Work equipment. He appeared dissatisfied with the answer. Pinebrook has strict HOA rules. People here value order. I reviewed the rules before I purchased the house. We also watch out for unusual activity. I value attentive neighbors, Maya said. I also value reasonable boundaries. Before Frank could respond, Ranger walked toward the eastern sidewalk. He stopped near a utility cover and began sniffing around the edge. Frank called him twice before the dog returned. Maya remembered the location. About an hour later, a delivery truck brought 2 boxes of environmental monitoring equipment. Frank called the police non-emergency line before the driver left. Officer Cole arrived 7 minutes later. He asked Maya to prove she owned the house. She showed him her driver's license and closing statement. Frank then asked Cole to inspect the delivered boxes. Cole refused because there was no warrant, reported crime, or immediate safety threat. After the patrol vehicle left, Maya entered her kitchen and recorded 3 facts with the brass mechanical pencil that had belonged to her father. Frank had made a non-emergency complaint. Police had arrived in 7 minutes. Cole had interviewed Frank before speaking to the homeowner. The response time was unusually fast, but Maya did not draw a conclusion from one incident. That evening, she reviewed the Pinebrook HOA packet. The documents included rules for parking, landscaping, exterior paint, and home repairs. The utility section referenced maintenance inspections that were not attached. She checked the online resident portal. The same records were missing. Outside, Ranger returned to the eastern utility cover. He sniffed the ground, stepped away, and then returned to the same location. Maya checked the wind direction and recorded the time. Over the next several days, she observed more details. Grass near the cover had begun turning yellow. A shallow depression had formed in the pavement. Ranger became restless whenever the irrigation system operated. Maya photographed each condition from the public sidewalk. She did not open anything or cross into restricted property. Frank saw the photographs and called police again. Now, as Cole returned to his SUV, Maya asked for the incident number and the name of the dispatcher who had classified the call. Cole paused before answering. Why do you need the dispatcher's name? Because this is the second rapid response to an unfounded complaint from the same caller. Frank stepped forward. My calls receive attention because the department knows my record. Maya closed her notebook. Then the department may have a problem larger than this street. Cole looked from Maya to Frank but said nothing. After the patrol vehicle left, Frank remained near the curb. You're trying to create trouble for people who have lived here longer than you, he said. I'm trying to understand why routine complaints from a retired officer are being treated as urgent police matters. You don't know how this department works. Not yet. Maya walked back toward her house. Ranger pulled again toward the eastern utility cover, but Frank ordered him inside. From her front porch, Maya watched Frank make another phone call. He spoke quietly and turned away when he noticed her looking. She recorded the time, then opened the HOA resident portal on her laptop. A utility maintenance file that had been visible the previous evening was no longer there. Maya checked the page history and found that the document had been removed shortly after Frank's call to the police. She did not know who had deleted it, but she now had 2 connected questions. Someone was giving Frank unusual influence over local officers, and someone within Pinebrook did not want the utility records examined. By Sunday morning, Maya knew Frank Callahan was monitoring her activities. She still needed to determine whether he was acting alone or reporting everything he saw to someone with more to hide. On Sunday morning, Frank Callahan began mowing his lawn shortly after 8. Even though the grass had been cut less than a week earlier, he guided the mower in straight lines and stopped whenever a vehicle slowed near Maya's house. Ranger followed him along the driveway but repeatedly turned toward the eastern sidewalk. From her kitchen window, Maya watched Frank pause when a delivery van passed, then continue mowing after it turned onto another street. His attention was not casual. He was keeping track of who entered Pinebrook Heights and where they stopped. Maya poured a cup of dark coffee and returned to the HOA documents on her laptop. The packet listed detailed rules for fences, mailboxes, exterior paint, yard signs, and overnight parking. The section on shared utilities referred to annual inspection reports, but none of those reports appeared in the packet or the resident portal. She sent a written request to the HOA office asking for the most recent gas line inspection, maintenance invoices, and contractor certifications. 20 minutes later, Charles Vance replied. He welcomed her to Pinebrook Heights and suggested that residents contact him personally before involving city departments. According to Charles, most neighborhood concerns could be resolved privately without creating unnecessary alarm. Maya read the message twice. He had responded quickly, but he had not provided a single record she requested. A white Subaru Outback pulled into her driveway just before 10. Lena Brooks stepped out carrying a paper bag of bagels, a tray of iced coffee, and a box containing camera equipment. "You have been here less than a week, and you already need surveillance," Lena said as Maya opened the door. "That has to be a personal record. The cameras are for documentation, not protection." That answer is not reassuring. Lena followed her into the kitchen and set the food on the counter. She had known Maya since graduate school and had learned not to expect complete explanations when Maya was working on something sensitive. Maya showed her the missing utility records, Frank's 2 police complaints, and Charles's response. Lena studied the event times. 7 minutes for a non-emergency equipment delivery? That is one of the questions. And the other? Whether Frank is acting on his own. Maya prepared 3 maintenance notices before they installed the cameras. Each stated that an indoor air quality technician would visit her home on Monday, but the arrival time differed. The copy intended for Frank said 9 in the morning. Charles's copy said 11. The copy submitted to the HOA office said 2 in the afternoon. The technician's real appointment was scheduled for 11. Lena watched Maya place the notices into separate envelopes. "You are giving each person different information. I am giving them harmless information. What they do with it will tell us where it travels." Maya walked next door and handed Frank his envelope. He had finished mowing and was sitting on his porch with his old department mug. "This concerns a maintenance appointment tomorrow," she said. "The technician may park near the shared property line." Frank opened the envelope immediately. 9 o'clock? That is what the notice says. Why do you need another inspection? The house has an older ventilation system. Do you suspect contamination? I prefer measurements to suspicions. Frank folded the notice and slipped it into his windbreaker pocket. His eyes moved toward Lena, who was positioning a camera beneath Maya's porch roof. "Is she recording my property?" "No. The cameras cover my porch, driveway, and yard. I'll decide that after I see where they're pointed. You do not have authority to inspect my security system." Frank reached for his phone before Maya had returned to her porch. Officer Cole arrived less than 15 minutes later. He inspected every camera angle and confirmed that none of them recorded Frank's windows or private yard. Frank stood beside him and pointed at the camera nearest the driveway. "She could change the angle after you leave." Cole looked tired. "Captain, the current installation follows the law. I want that included in the report." Maya stepped closer. "Please also include the exact direction of each camera and Mr. Callahan's claim that I might alter them later." Frank turned toward her. "You are trying to create a paper trail. Paper trails usually create themselves. People only notice them when they lead somewhere uncomfortable." Cole wrote down the camera positions and gave Maya the event number. Before leaving, he reminded both of them that repeated calls about lawful activity could create unnecessary demands on patrol resources. Frank waited until the police vehicle was gone before returning inside. His kitchen was quiet. Elaine's ceramic sugar bowl still sat in the center of the table, although he had taken his coffee black since her death. He placed his department mug beside it and removed the challenge coin from his pocket. Retirement had taken more from him than a uniform and an office. Younger officers stopped calling for advice. Department meetings continued without him. After Elaine died, no one remained to ask how his day had gone. Charles still called him Captain. When Charles phoned that afternoon, Frank described the cameras, the maintenance notice, and Maya's questions about police response times. "She is building a case against someone," Frank said. Charles remained calm. "Then it is fortunate that someone with your experience is paying attention. You think she plans to sue the HOA? I think new residents sometimes arrive with plans they do not disclose. We should not assume the worst, but we should document anything unusual." The word document confirmed Frank's belief that he still had a responsibility to act. On Monday morning, Maya waited at her kitchen table with the 3 notices arranged beside her notebook. The air quality technician arrived at 10:55 in a white service van displaying his company name and state license number. 2 minutes later, a Cedar Grove patrol vehicle turned onto Magnolia Crest Drive. Cole stepped out and looked toward Maya's house with visible frustration. "We received a report about a suspicious contractor approaching utility access points," he said. The technician raised his work order. "I'm scheduled to inspect the ventilation system inside the residence," Maya asked. "What arrival time did the caller provide?" Cole checked the dispatch notes. "Approximately 11. Only Charles had received that time." Maya looked down the street. Charles stood near his mailbox in a pressed blue shirt, pretending to sort through several envelopes. When he noticed her watching, he turned toward his house. Cole verified the technician's credentials and closed the call without entering Maya's property. Maya requested the event number and asked the technician to record the police interruption in his service report. The indoor readings were normal. Near the eastern wall, however, the technician paused. "There's a faint odor outside," he said. "It could be drainage or landscaping chemicals, but I would keep monitoring it." Frank was near his driveway and heard the comment. Before Maya could approach him, he went inside and made a phone call. Later that evening, Lena sat at Maya's kitchen counter while they compared the notices, call times, and Charles's email. "The 11 o'clock information reached the police," Lena said. "Charles was the only person outside this house who had it." "It proves a communication path," Maya replied. "It does not prove why he used it." She slipped each notice into a separate clear evidence sleeve and wrote the corresponding event number beneath it. Lena watched her use the brass mechanical pencil. "You still carry your father's pencil everywhere?" He believed an inspector should be willing to revise a conclusion, but never without recording why. Maya labeled a new folder Pinebrook Communications Pattern and placed it beside the missing utility record request. Outside, Ranger stood at the edge of Frank's yard and stared toward the eastern utility cover. By the time darkness settled over Magnolia Crest Drive, Maya had stopped testing what Frank believed. She was now testing who answered him. If you feel for Maya and admire how she stayed calm, trusted the evidence, and refused to be intimidated, please like this video. Tell us in the comments where you're watching from, because someone near you may be watching Maya's story with you right now. Maya left her house shortly after 6 on Tuesday morning with her phone, notebook, and air quality monitor in a small shoulder bag. She followed the eastern sidewalk, stopping at several utility markers near the shared gas line. The neighborhood was beginning its usual morning routine. Garage doors opened, newspapers were collected from driveways, and a pickup truck idled near the corner before its owner left for work. Reverend Ruth Carter was watering red geraniums on her porch when Maya passed. "You start early," Ruth said. "It is easier to observe the area before traffic picks up." Ruth looked toward Frank's house. "Around here, someone is always observing something." Maya smiled politely and continued walking. Near the eastern utility cover, she photographed a narrow strip of yellow grass and a shallow depression in the pavement. Neither condition proved that the underground line had failed, but both justified further inspection. She recorded the outdoor temperature, recent rainfall, and wind direction before placing the monitor several inches above the ground. The reading remained within a normal range. A sprinkler system activated 2 houses away. Water crossed the edge of the sidewalk and moved toward the utility cover. Ranger, who had been standing near Frank's driveway, raised his head immediately. The dog walked as far as his leash allowed, lowered his nose, and began scratching the ground. Frank came outside wearing khaki pants and his old police windbreaker. "Ranger, leave it." The dog continued for several seconds before returning to him. Maya wrote down the time. Frank watched her. "You're documenting my dog now?" "I'm documenting conditions near the utility line. You've already had a technician inspect your house. He inspected the indoor ventilation system. This is outside." Frank stepped closer to the sidewalk. "You keep taking pictures of other people's property. I'm photographing public infrastructure and visible ground conditions. You don't know enough about Pinebrook to decide what requires an investigation. That is why I'm collecting information instead of making assumptions." Frank took out his phone. Maya did not try to stop him. A marked police SUV arrived within 10 minutes, followed by another vehicle driven by Captain Laura Bennett. She was a composed woman in her late 40s with a direct manner and a peppermint candy tucked into one cheek. She greeted Frank first. "Morning, Captain. What happened?" Frank pointed toward Maya. "She has been walking through the neighborhood before sunrise, photographing houses and recording residents' routines. I believe she is conducting unauthorized surveillance." Maya waited until he finished. Bennett turned to her. "Miss Williams, what are you photographing?" "The utility covers, gas markers, damaged grass, and pavement conditions. I have not photographed anyone inside a home or entered private property." "May I see the pictures?" Maya opened the photo folder on her phone and showed Bennett each image. They included only sidewalks, utility markers, grass, pavement, and the exterior wall of Maya's own house. Bennett handed the phone back. "These do not show private activity." Frank looked dissatisfied. "She was also watching people leave for work." "I was walking on a public sidewalk," Maya said. "Seeing a garage door open does not make me responsible for surveilling the homeowner." Frank turned to Bennett. "You know my record. I would not call if I did not see a legitimate concern." Maya noticed Bennett's hesitation. The captain respected Frank, but she did not appear comfortable with the frequency of his complaints. Maya asked, "Was this call classified as an emergency?" "No," Bennett said. "What priority did it receive?" "That is an internal dispatch matter." "Then I would like the event number, dispatch time, and arrival time." Bennett studied her. "Why are you requesting that level of detail?" "Because officers have repeatedly arrived within minutes for complaints involving no crime, no damage, and no immediate threat. That may indicate efficient service, or it may indicate unusual prioritization." Officer Cole stood beside Bennett and looked toward the ground. Maya turned to him. "Was this call marked differently from an ordinary suspicious person report?" Cole hesitated. Bennett said, "Officer, there was an RCC notation." Cole answered. Maya kept her expression neutral. "What does RCC mean?" "Retired Command Contact." Frank interrupted. "It means the department recognizes that I have training and experience." Maya looked at Bennett. "Is that code? Part of a written Cedar Grove policy?" Bennett did not answer immediately. "It is a courtesy notation used for certain retired senior officers." "Who authorized it?" "I would have to check." "What effect does it have?" Cole answered before Bennett could stop him. "Dispatch treats the caller as a trained observer. The report may be sent directly to a supervisor or given faster attention." Frank crossed his arms. "That system exists because people in the department know I do not waste their time." Maya closed her notebook. 3 police responses in less than a week have found no violation. At some point, the department should review whether your reputation is replacing verification. Frank's face hardened. "You have no standing to question department procedure. Any resident repeatedly subjected to that procedure has standing to ask how it works." Bennett ended the exchange. She confirmed that Maya had violated no law and told Frank future reports should identify specific conduct rather than general suspicion. Before leaving, she gave Maya the event number but advised her to submit formal record requests through the department. Frank remained by the curb after the patrol vehicles departed. "You are turning routine neighborhood concerns into a campaign," he said. "I am asking why your old title changes how quickly officers respond." "My title represents 30 years of service." "It represents service you completed 4 years ago." Frank said nothing further. He called Ranger and returned home. Inside his kitchen, he poured coffee into the chipped department mug that he had used for more than 20 years. Elaine's ceramic sugar bowl remained on the table, although it had not been used since her death. Frank removed the challenge coin from his pocket and placed it beside the mug. During his first months of retirement, younger officers had called for advice. Those calls became less frequent as new supervisors took over. Department briefings continued without him, and cases he once would have reviewed were handled by people he barely knew. Charles still called him captain. Dispatchers still recognized his voice. The quick police responses gave Frank confidence that his judgment continued to matter. He did not consider that the courtesy might be distorting the department's decisions. Later that morning, Ruth invited Maya into her kitchen for sweet tea. The room held framed photographs from Ruth's years as a high school principal, a handwritten neighborhood telephone list, and a wall calendar from a local funeral home. Frank was not always this difficult, Ruth said. He helped people during storms, checked on elderly residents, and organized neighborhood watches. What changed? His wife became ill, then he retired, then she died. He lost his work and his family routine within a few years. That explains why he needs control, Maya said. It does not justify using police resources to enforce it. No, it doesn't. Maya asked about Charles. Ruth lowered her glass. Charles rarely tells people what to do. He gives them enough information to believe the decision was theirs. Has anyone challenged his maintenance records before? A couple tried several years ago. They sold their house before the dispute went anywhere. Why? Most people here did not want conflict. They told themselves Charles understood the finances better than they did. Ruth looked through the kitchen window toward the eastern sidewalk. Silence can keep a dinner table peaceful while the whole house fills with smoke. When Maya left, Ranger was standing near the utility cover again. His ears were lowered, and he refused to follow Frank across the sidewalk. Maya detected a faint, sulfur-like odor. It disappeared when the wind changed. Frank pulled gently on Ranger's leash. "Don't interfere with him." "I'm not questioning the dog," Maya said. "I'm questioning the explanation people are giving for his behavior." That night, Maya searched Cedar Grove's published police policies. She found no reference to RCC, Retired Command Priority, or any similar courtesy classification. She printed the relevant sections and placed them in her communications folder. At 2:14 the next morning, her laptop alerted her that an HOA maintenance file had been edited and removed from the resident portal. The deleted document concerned pressure irregularities in Pinebrook's eastern gas line. Maya downloaded every version of the deleted maintenance file that remained in her browser cache, then compared the dates, signatures, and revision history. The report claimed that Pinebrook's eastern gas line had been inspected 6 months earlier and found safe. However, the file itself had been created only 8 weeks ago, and the engineer's signature appeared as an inserted image rather than a verified digital certification. She called Lena before sunrise. "I need you to compare 2 public documents," Maya said. "No system access, no recovery tools, and no attempts to enter the HOA portal." Lena yawned. "You always know how to make a request sound exciting. I need a clean comparison that can survive legal review." That part sounded more serious. Maya sent her the downloaded report and an older inspection document from the city archive. Lena agreed to review only the visible file properties and public registration records. By 8, Maya had confirmed another problem. The company named in the report had allowed its state registration to expire more than a year earlier. The engineer whose signature appeared at the bottom had retired before the listed inspection date. Someone had created a report to make an unresolved safety issue appear closed. At 9:30, Charles Vance arrived at Maya's front door carrying a white bakery box from the Magnolia Diner. He wore a navy sport coat, pressed trousers, and a calm expression. A silver fountain pen was clipped neatly inside his breast pocket. "I thought we should begin again," he said when Maya opened the door. Apple pie tends to improve difficult conversations. Maya stepped aside. "Coffee?" "Black, please." Charles placed the bakery box on the kitchen counter and sat at the table. He looked around without appearing to inspect the room, but Maya noticed his attention pause on the locked equipment cases near the hallway. "I understand you have concerns about the utility records," he began. "I requested the inspection reports. I received no records. Older files are not always organized as well as they should be. Pinebrook was built before most associations used digital systems. The missing report was uploaded, edited, and deleted last night. That is not an archival problem." Charles's expression did not change. "You have been monitoring the resident portal closely. I monitor records connected to public safety." He folded his hands on the table. "Several residents are becoming nervous. They see equipment, cameras, police visits, and questions about underground gas lines. Most of them moved here because they wanted stability. The police visits began because Frank kept calling them. Frank is protective of the neighborhood. Frank is using an unofficial relationship with the department to turn suspicion into police activity." Charles reached for the silver pen and rolled it between his fingers. Frank served this city for 30 years. People respect his judgment. Respect does not verify a report. Charles set the pen down. I came to offer a practical solution. Remove the outdoor sensors for now, and I will withdraw the equipment violation. I can arrange for a contractor familiar with Pinebrook to inspect the line. There is no need to involve city agencies or create public concern. Maya took a sip of coffee. When was the Eastern Line last pressure tested? Late spring. Which company performed the test? Carolina Municipal Inspection Services. Was the engineer physically present? Charles paused before answering. I assume so. You signed the certification. As HOA president, I sign many documents based on professional reports. Then, you should know who performed the inspection. Charles leaned back. Miss Williams, most homeowners do not interrogate volunteers over routine maintenance. Most volunteers do not ask residents to remove safety equipment before producing valid inspection records. His voice remained polite. People move here for peace. Constant questions make people nervous. Unanswered questions make me nervous. Charles looked at her for several seconds, then stood. I hope we can resolve this privately. So do I. Please send the complete inspection file, the contractor invoice, and the maintenance payment record by the end of the day. He placed the silver pen back in his pocket and left the pie unopened. Frank watched from his driveway as Charles crossed the street. Less than 10 minutes later, Charles called him. She is preparing something against the association, Charles said. Possibly a lawsuit. Frank looked toward Maya's house. Did she admit that? Not directly. She is collecting records, challenging police procedure, and placing equipment near shared property. I am concerned about what she intends to do next. What do you want me to do? I would never tell you how to handle a safety concern, Captain. You have far more experience than I do. I only ask that you remain observant. Frank accepted the request as confirmation that his judgment was still needed. That afternoon, Maya placed a disconnected air quality unit near her back door. The device had no active sensors and no stored data. She attached a clear label that read, Air quality unit do not move. The camera above her porch recorded Frank walking to the edge of her property 20 minutes later. He did not cross the line, but he used his phone to photograph the label. 12 minutes after that, Maya received an email from the HOA. The notice ordered her to remove an unapproved air quality device from exterior view. It quoted the label exactly and claimed the unit might interfere with neighborhood utilities. Maya replied to Charles in the HOA office. Please preserve all emails, text messages, photographs, call records, and internal communications associated with this notice. Charles opened her response twice within 3 minutes. Maya knew because the resident communication system showed the delivery confirmation. She then called Lena. The notice repeated the exact wording from the label, Maya said. Frank took the photograph, and Charles issued the violation. That proves communication. It proves a path. We still need the purpose. Lena had completed her document review. The inspection company listed in the report was dissolved 14 months ago. The engineer retired 6 months before the inspection date. The signature image matches one used on a public report from 3 years ago. Send me the comparison with your method documented. I already did. Maya opened the first locked case after ending the call. Inside were sealed evidence pouches, an encrypted storage drive, several official forms with their headers folded under, and a plain black phone she had not used since arriving in Cedar Grove. She transferred copies of the false report, the HOA notice, the camera footage, and the document comparison onto the encrypted drive. She then activated the black phone and typed a short message. Pattern confirmed. Continue passive observation. No overt contact yet. She sent it without adding a name or explanation. Rain began shortly after sunset. Despite the weather, the neighborhood irrigation system activated on its regular schedule. Water spread across the eastern sidewalk and collected near the utility cover. Ranger began barking from Frank's porch. He pulled against his leash and focused on the same section of pavement Maya had photographed that morning. Maya stepped outside with her reel monitor. She positioned it above the ground, without touching the cover. The reading rose, remained elevated for several seconds, then returned to normal when the wind changed. She checked the visible sensor near her porch and saw that its angle had been altered. The mounting bracket was intact, but the device no longer faced the eastern line. Someone had moved it deliberately. Maya reviewed the camera footage, but the person had approached from outside the camera's clearest field of view. A dark rain jacket and one gloved hand were visible. The face was not. She saved the recording. Rather than making an accusation she could not prove. Near midnight, a vehicle started beside the HOA office and drove away without headlights until it reached the neighborhood entrance. Maya recorded the time and direction of travel. By the end of her first week in Pinebrook, she had identified 3 separate threats: the unstable line beneath the street, the false information inside the HOA records, and the network of people working to prevent anyone from connecting the two. Over the next 3 days, Frank called the police 5 more times. The first complaint concerned a licensed utility technician who parked beside Maya's driveway for less than an hour. The second involved Lena carrying 2 encrypted storage drives into the house. The third followed Reverend Ruth Carter's evening visit, which Frank described as an unregistered neighborhood meeting. The fourth targeted a service van that stopped near the eastern utility corridor. The fifth came after Frank saw Maya using an air quality monitor shortly after sunset. None of the incidents involved a crime, property damage, or immediate danger. Each one still produced an event number, a dispatch entry, and another official record connected to Maya's address. The visits developed a familiar pattern. A police vehicle stopped at the curb, a door closed, and an officer approached Maya's porch while Frank watched from his property. Frank always described his concern as a request for verification. Maya always answered the questions, requested the event number, and recorded the response time. She never raised her voice, but the interruptions began changing the way she lived. On Wednesday morning, Maya drove to a neighborhood market and bought tomatoes, sourdough bread, ground turkey, and ingredients for chili. When she returned, an older couple across the street stopped talking as she walked past them. The woman offered a quick smile, but her husband avoided eye contact and carried their groceries inside. Later that afternoon, Maya took a jacket to the dry cleaner and stopped at the Magnolia Diner for coffee. 2 Pinebrook residents were seated at a booth near the window. Their conversation ended when she entered. Maya ordered dark coffee and sat at the counter. She did not confront them. Several minutes later, one of the women approached her while her friend remained at the booth. "I'm sorry about the awkwardness," the woman said. "Frank told several people you might be investigating property claims against the neighborhood. I'm reviewing a safety concern." That isn't how he described it. "What did he say?" The woman hesitated. "He said you were collecting information that could affect property values." Maya understood why the warning had worked. Many Pinebrook residents had spent decades paying their mortgages. Some were retired and living on fixed incomes. Their homes represented savings, security, and the ability to leave something to their families. Charles did not need to accuse Maya of a crime. He only needed Frank to suggest that her questions could threaten what they had worked to preserve. "Thank you for telling me," Maya said. The woman nodded but did not offer her name. She returned to the booth and left soon afterward. That evening, Maya prepared turkey chili and brought a container to Ruth's house. Ruth invited her inside, but Maya declined because she still had records to review. "You cannot live on coffee and paperwork," Ruth said. "I had lunch at the diner." Maya looked at her. Ruth smiled. "People here still use the telephone. News travels faster than anyone admits." Maya handed her the container. "Then you probably know." Frank called the police again. "I heard the patrol vehicle. He reported Lena for carrying data equipment into my house. What did he think was on it?" He did not know. That was enough for him. Ruth's expression became serious. "Frank used to check on people because he thought they needed help. Now he checks on them because he thinks he needs control." Maya returned home and added the latest call to a spreadsheet. For every incident, she recorded the complaint, priority level, responding unit, verification steps, outcome, and effect on other services. The response pattern was becoming difficult to dismiss. Frank's report about Lena received a patrol response in less than 12 minutes. During that same period, a damaged stop sign near Route 16 waited more than an hour for an officer. A reported vehicle break-in several streets away remained pending, while 2 units were sent to verify Maya's service van. A welfare check was delayed because the nearest patrol officer had been directed to Pinebrook. Frank's calls were not merely inconvenient. They were changing how limited police resources were assigned. Officer Cole returned on Thursday afternoon after Frank reported the handheld detector Maya was using near her own flower bed. The temperature was high, and Cole looked tired when he reached the porch. Maya offered him a bottle of water. "Thank you," he said, accepting it. "For what it's worth, I told dispatch there was no reason to send another unit, but they sent you." The RCC notation pushed it to a supervisor. Maya opened her notebook. "Was there a specific allegation?" "He said you might be conducting unauthorized environmental testing." "On my property?" "Yes." "Is that illegal?" "No." Cole looked toward Frank's house. "Captain Callahan has never been known for making false reports." Maya kept her tone level. "How many reports can be wrong before reputation stops being evidence?" Cole loosened the cap on the water, but did not drink. He may genuinely believe there is a problem. Belief explains the call. It does not justify the priority. He spent 30 years in the department, and I have spent 1 week being investigated because of it. Cole looked at the folder in her hand. "What are you planning to do with all these event numbers?" "I am documenting how the system responds when a familiar caller repeatedly reports lawful conduct." That sounds like more than a neighborhood complaint. It became more than a neighborhood complaint when police courtesy began delaying unrelated calls. Cole studied her for a moment. "You know a great deal about dispatch procedure. Enough to recognize when a shortcut becomes policy." He closed the call as unfounded and left without speaking to Frank. Across the street, Charles arrived, carrying a paper bag from the Magnolia Diner. He joined Frank on the porch and handed him a covered plate of meatloaf, mashed potatoes, and green beans. Frank described Cole's reluctance to act. "The younger officers are too cautious now," he said. "They are afraid to trust experience." Charles sat beside him. "Your experience is why people here feel safe. She is making them question my judgment." "She is making them question everyone," Charles replied. "The HOA, the police, even the neighborhood itself. That may be intentional." Frank looked toward Maya's house. "What do you think she wants?" "I do not know. That is why your attention matters." Inside, Ranger began whining near the back door. Frank assumed the dog had heard activity at Maya's house. He did not notice that the irrigation system had just started along the eastern side of the street. Maya did. She stood near her kitchen window and watched Ranger move toward the utility cover as soon as Frank released him into the yard. The dog ignored Maya's porch, Lena's vehicle, and the service equipment near the driveway. His attention remained fixed on the same section of ground. Maya recorded the irrigation time and opened the gas company's public complaint portal. She submitted a request for all pressure loss reports connected to Pinebrook's eastern line. Ruth called before Maya finished. "Are you all right?" she asked. "I am working. That was not my question." Maya looked at the event numbers spread across her dining table. People are beginning to treat the police visits as evidence that Frank must know something. That is how repeated suspicion works. It becomes familiar before it becomes true. "I can prove the calls are unfounded. Legal proof matters," Ruth said. "But people also need someone willing to interrupt the story they have accepted." Maya remained silent. Ruth continued. "Silence can keep a dinner table peaceful, while the whole house fills with smoke." After the call ended, Maya connected Frank's complaints, Charles's HOA notices, and the dispatch response times with lines across a printed neighborhood map. Frank appeared to be at the center of the conflict, but his influence depended on several people choosing to honor it. A dispatcher raised the priority. An officer responded, without verification. Charles supplied information. Residents accepted the resulting police presence as proof. The system did not require a direct order from Frank. It required only a chain of favors that no one had formally approved. Maya placed the map beside the gas line records and opened a new evidence log. To understand who controlled that chain, she needed to stop focusing on what Frank said and determine exactly where his words traveled. The next morning, Maya prepared a formal response to the latest HOA notice. She wrote that her equipment was located on private property, posed no hazard, and complied with all published neighborhood restrictions. Before sending it, she added 3 deliberate spelling errors and 1 unusual technical phrase: localized subsurface pressure irregularity. She sent the document only to Charles Vance and the official HOA email account. Lena joined her by video call from Charlotte. "You expect Charles to share it with Frank." "I expect the language to travel," Maya said. "We need to know how far." Less than 2 hours later, Officer Cole returned to Magnolia Crest Drive. Frank stood near the curb with Ranger and spoke before Cole reached Maya's porch. "She is conducting unauthorized testing related to a localized subsurface pressure irregularity." That sounds like commercial work to me. He pronounced the phrase carefully but repeated one of Maya's spelling mistakes when he showed Cole a handwritten note. Maya stepped outside with a copy of the HOA response. "Where did you hear that phrase?" she asked. Frank folded the note. "I know enough about utility systems to describe a concern. That wording appeared in a document I sent only to the HOA this morning." Frank glanced toward Charles's house. "Maybe you have used it before." "I have not." Cole looked between them. "Captain, did someone from the HOA contact you?" "Charles and I discuss neighborhood matters. That is not illegal." "No," Maya said. "But it confirms that private correspondence is being passed to you and then used to generate police complaints." Frank's expression hardened. "You are trying to make ordinary communication sound criminal." "I am documenting the route information takes before officers arrive at my door." Cole asked whether Maya had performed any testing outside her property. "No. I have used legal monitoring equipment on my property and in public areas without opening or altering any utility structure." Cole closed the complaint as unfounded. Before leaving, he told Frank that future reports needed to describe a specific violation rather than repeat concerns from an HOA document. Frank did not answer. Inside, Maya opened the second document she had prepared. Lena had added a lawful tracking marker that recorded when the file was opened through the document service. It did not install software, collect private information, or enter any system. It only identified the access points used to open a file that Charles had voluntarily received. Maya sent the document to the HOA office. It contained a request for the original gas line inspection, the contractor invoice, and the engineer's license verification. By late afternoon, Lena called with the access results. "The file was opened 4 times, she said. First at the HOA office, then from Charles's home network. That was expected. The third access came from another residential device in Pinebrook. I cannot identify the owner from the lawful data we have. Most likely, Frank. The fourth came from a network registered to the Cedar Grove Police Department." Maya stopped writing. "Can you identify the user?" she asked. "Not without records we do not have the right to access." "Then we do not guess." Lena sounded frustrated. "Someone inside the department is reading HOA files connected to you, or someone received the file through an approved city account. We record what we can prove." "You always say that when the obvious answer is standing in front of us. The obvious answer is often where an investigation becomes careless." Maya asked Lena to preserve the access log, record the collection method, and make no further attempt to identify the device. That evening, she turned her attention to Ranger. For 4 days, she had recorded the dog's behavior, the wind direction, outdoor temperature, irrigation schedule, and sensor readings. A consistent pattern had emerged. Ranger became restless after the sprinkler system operated, or when the wind moved from the eastern utility corridor toward Frank's property. The dog did not react when Lena arrived. He did not react to Maya's delivery drivers or service technicians. He reacted to one area of the street. Maya set up 3 monitoring devices. The first was visible near the edge of her porch. The second was concealed inside a large planter in her yard. The third was mounted near her mailbox, within her property line, and away from the public sidewalk. She activated all 3 shortly before sunset. The neighborhood planning committee met that evening to prepare for Pinebrook's annual fall social. Maya could hear residents discussing folding tables, slow cookers, apple cider, cornbread, and strings of lights for the community hall. A portable generator was scheduled for delivery at the end of the week. Charles stood near the entrance with a clipboard, assigning tasks and reassuring residents that the recent utility questions were a misunderstanding. Maya attended only long enough to observe the planned equipment locations. The generator would be placed near the eastern side of the hall, close to the utility corridor. She returned home and added the location to her map. At 1:36 in the morning, the mailbox sensor recorded a significant increase in gas concentration. The reading lasted less than a minute, then declined as the wind shifted. Maya checked the other devices at sunrise. The visible sensor had been switched off. The planter sensor was gone. The mailbox sensor remained active because it had not been noticed. She reviewed the camera footage. A person in a dark rain jacket entered the edge of the frame shortly after midnight. The figure approached from the sidewalk, reached toward the visible sensor, then moved in the direction of the planter. The person's face remained outside the camera angle. Lena arrived before noon with Chinese takeout and a portable drive for the evidence copies. She reviewed the footage twice. "That could be Frank," she said. "It could be Charles, or someone working for either of them. Someone removed a safety monitor from your property." "Yes, but the video does not identify that person." Lena set down her container of lo mein. "At what point do you contact someone with enough authority to stop this? Authority can stop a single act. Evidence can stop the method that allowed it." Lena looked at the locked case near the hallway. "You have access to more than you are telling me." Maya did not respond. Outside, Ranger began whining at Frank's back door. When Frank released him into the yard, the dog moved directly toward the eastern sidewalk and stopped near the same utility cover. Frank followed with the leash. For several seconds, he watched Ranger scratch the ground. Years earlier, Ranger had alerted him to risks that no officer had noticed. Frank had trusted the dog during searches, storms, and dangerous calls. Now Ranger's behavior challenged the explanation Frank had accepted from Charles. Frank almost crossed the street to speak with Maya. His phone rang first. Charles told him that Maya was using unapproved equipment to create false evidence against the HOA. He suggested she might be trying to force an expensive construction project that would raise neighborhood dues. Frank looked at Ranger, then at Maya's house. "Her equipment disappeared last night," he said. Charles paused. Perhaps she removed it herself to make another accusation. Frank accepted the possibility because it required no change in his judgment. Later that afternoon, Maya received written confirmation from the gas company. Pinebrook's eastern line had been recommended for replacement 10 months earlier, but the work order had been marked complete without a matching service record. Lena compared the contractor details with state business records. The company named in the HOA report had been dissolved 14 months earlier, and the engineer had retired before the listed inspection date. Maya placed the false report beside Charles's HOA notice. She set her father's brass pencil across both documents and recorded the new findings. The records now proved that the inspection was false and that the safety problem remained unresolved. What Maya still needed was evidence showing who had ordered the deception, who had interfered with the monitors, and why a police department device had opened a private HOA file. Frank distributed the invitations on Friday afternoon. Each sheet announced an informal neighborhood safety conversation at the Pinebrook Community Hall that evening. The invitation did not mention Maya by name, but it listed concerns about unauthorized monitoring equipment, outside contractors, police activity, and possible threats to property values. Reverend Ruth Carter brought a copy to Maya shortly before 5. "You were not invited," Ruth said, "but most of the meeting is about you." Maya read the page at her kitchen counter. "Is this an official HOA meeting?" "Charles says it is not." "Then why is it being held in the HOA community hall?" "Because Charles prefers to influence a meeting without becoming responsible for what is said there." Maya placed the invitation beside the gas company letter. "I'll attend." The meeting began at 7. Nearly 40 residents filled the folding chairs inside the hall. Most were middle-aged or retired homeowners who had lived in Pinebrook for many years. Coffee was available from 2 aluminum urns near the back wall, along with pound cake, oatmeal cookies, and paper cups of apple cider. Photographs from earlier neighborhood picnics hung beside an American flag near the stage. Frank stood at the front of the room in a pressed shirt and dark slacks. He had left the police windbreaker at home, but his challenge coin rested in his right hand. Charles sat near the side wall with a clipboard and his silver fountain pen. Frank waited until the room became quiet. "Thank you for coming," he said. "This is not about attacking anyone. It is about protecting the neighborhood we have built together." Several residents nodded. Frank described the events of the previous week. He said Maya had photographed utility covers, installed environmental monitors, requested police dispatch information, brought unknown technicians into Pinebrook, and demanded access to HOA financial records. He also mentioned that she had refused to identify her employer. "I spent 30 years in law enforcement," he continued. "I learned that unusual behavior deserves attention before it becomes a larger problem. We should not wait until our property values decline or our streets are torn apart to ask what is happening." A man in the second row raised his hand. "Are you saying she plans to sue the HOA?" "I am saying we do not know what she plans to do." Charles leaned forward, but remained seated. "The association supports transparency. At the same time, public allegations about gas leaks can affect insurance coverage, resale values, and future assessments. We should be responsible about the information we spread." A woman near the aisle asked whether the gas line had passed inspection. Charles gave a reassuring smile. "The records indicate that it did. There appears to be a clerical issue involving the contractor's paperwork, and we are reviewing it." He did not mention that the contractor no longer existed or that the engineer had retired before the stated inspection date. Frank continued, "No one objects to reasonable questions. The concern is the manner in which these questions are being pursued. Police officers have been drawn into repeated disputes. Cameras have appeared, and residents are beginning to feel watched." Ruth entered through the side door with Maya beside her. The room became quiet again. Maya took an empty seat in the back row. "Please, continue. I would like to hear the complete concern." Frank looked at Charles, who gave a slight nod. "You were not invited," Frank said. "The invitation discusses my property, my equipment, and my requests for public safety records. I believe I should be allowed to listen." Charles stood. "This is an informal gathering, Miss Williams. We are trying to reduce tension. Then accurate information would be useful." Frank placed both hands on the lectern. "You have brought tension into Pinebrook since the day you arrived." Maya remained seated. "I purchased a house, accepted lawful deliveries, installed cameras on my property, and requested maintenance records. The police visits occurred because you repeatedly reported those activities. I reported behavior that required verification. Every report was closed without a violation. That does not make the concerns unreasonable." Maya rose and walked toward the front without hurrying. She stopped several feet from Frank. "I have 3 questions," she said. "First, who gave you the contents of a private document I sent only to the HOA?" Frank looked toward Charles. "The association keeps residents informed about safety matters. The document was not distributed to residents. It was sent to Charles and the HOA office. You repeated its exact wording to Officer Cole within 2 hours." Charles spoke from his seat. "Frank and I discuss neighborhood issues. There is nothing improper about that." Maya looked at him. "Then the answer to my first question is that you gave it to him." Charles did not respond. "My second question concerns the RCC notation attached to Frank's calls. Under what written police policy does a retired officer receive priority treatment?" Frank's face tightened. "That is a department matter. It became a neighborhood matter when your reports were placed ahead of unrelated calls." A few residents exchanged concerned looks. Maya continued, "My third question is for Mr. Vance. Why does the completed gas inspection contain the signature of an engineer who retired 6 months before the stated inspection date?" Charles picked up his silver pen. "Technical records often involve administrative corrections. Was the engineer present? I would need to review the full file. You signed the certification. I sign documents based on the work of qualified professionals. Which qualified professional confirmed that report?" Charles did not answer. Frank stepped away from the lectern. "This is exactly what I meant. You are creating distrust in a neighborhood that was peaceful before you arrived." Maya faced him. "I did not bring distrust here. I found missing records, false dates, and police privileges that no one can explain. You do not understand this community. I understand that many people in this room spent most of their lives paying for their homes. They deserve to know whether the gas line beneath those homes is safe." A retired accountant in the front row asked Charles to release the contractor invoice. Another resident requested the original pressure test results. A woman who lived near the eastern corridor said she had noticed an unusual odor after the irrigation system operated. Charles stood and raised one hand. There is no confirmed emergency. If the association orders an unnecessary excavation, every homeowner may face a substantial assessment. Some residents here live on fixed incomes. The warning changed the mood. Several people began discussing possible costs. Maya understood the tactic. Charles had moved the discussion away from the accuracy of the records and toward financial fear. Frank addressed the room again. Outside investigations can create consequences that are difficult to reverse. We need to protect what we have built. Maya looked at the long-term residents seated around her. Protection begins with facts, not familiarity. Frank stared at her. He had used similar words while training younger officers, and he recognized the principle even though he rejected its application to himself. Ruth stood near the back wall. I have lived here for almost 3 decades, she said. Years ago, residents asked questions about another HOA decision. Most of us stayed quiet because we did not want conflict. The people who raised the issue eventually moved away, and we never learned whether they were right. Charles closed his clipboard. This meeting was intended to improve communication, not conduct a public interrogation. I believe we should end for the evening. You are ending it before answering the questions, Ruth said. Charles did not reply. He announced that the HOA would provide a written update and asked everyone to leave in an orderly manner. Outside, residents formed small groups near the parking lot. Some approached Maya and asked about the gas company letter. Others avoided her and went directly to their cars. Frank followed Maya toward the sidewalk. You embarrassed me in front of people who trusted me for years, he said. I asked questions you could not answer. You are trying to destroy my reputation. I am trying to determine why your reputation receives more weight than evidence. Frank stepped closer but did not touch her. What do you actually want? Accurate maintenance records, a professional gas line inspection, and police procedures that do not change based on who makes the call. You think you can enter this neighborhood and decide how everything should operate? A community is not private property belonging to the people who arrived first. Maya left before the argument could continue. When she reached home, she found that the visible air quality sensor had been disconnected. A new HOA notice had been attached to her door, ordering the removal of all unapproved equipment. Charles's signature appeared at the bottom in silver ink. Maya photographed the notice, preserved the disconnected sensor, and checked the camera recording. The angle did not show who had approached the device. She did not need another accusation without proof. Inside, she placed the notice beside the other documents and updated the evidence log. Frank had chosen to defend Charles publicly, while Charles had responded to scrutiny by interfering with the monitoring process. Neither man appeared to understand that every attempt to stop Maya was producing another record she could use. Early the next morning, Maya prepared 3 separate inspection notices. Each one referred to a scheduled review of Pinebrook's underground gas system, but the access location was different. Frank's copy identified the north service gate. Charles's copy identified the east gate. The version sent to the official HOA office identified the central valve room. Only the central valve room appeared on the gas company's actual work order. Maya delivered Frank's notice by hand. He opened it while standing on his porch with Ranger beside him. You're arranging another inspection? He asked. The gas company needs access to shared infrastructure. The north gate is controlled by the HOA. That information is included in the notice. Frank studied the page. You expect us to cooperate after the way you behaved at the meeting. I expect the association to comply with a valid safety request. She left before he could continue. Charles received his notice by certified email. The HOA office confirmed receipt of the 3rd version shortly before noon. Maya then checked the cameras covering the public approach to the central utility area and replaced the storage drive with a clean, time-stamped unit. Nothing unusual happened during the afternoon. At 11:18 that night, motion activated the camera near the central valve room. Maya was reviewing dispatch records when an alert appeared on her laptop. She opened the secure video feed and saw Charles walking along the side of the community hall. He wore a dark coat and carried a flashlight. He entered a code on the valve room keypad and stepped inside. The camera recorded him examining the control panel, opening a maintenance cabinet, and removing an old inspection tag attached to a pipe diagram. He photographed the tag before slipping it into his coat pocket. Charles then checked the door frame and the wall above the cabinet. When he turned toward the entrance, a small indicator light reflected in the glass panel. He stopped. For several seconds, he looked directly toward the camera. Maya saved the recording to 2 encrypted drives and sent a protected copy through the black phone. She did not leave her house or confront Charles. The recording was more valuable if he did not know what else she had documented. By 7 the next morning, the electronic code for the utility area had been changed. Maya arrived at the east gate with a licensed gas technician shortly before 8. The technician carried a pressure monitor, utility maps, and a work order authorizing access to the central valve room. The keypad rejected the code provided by the HOA. The technician tried again. Someone changed it. After this order was issued, Maya called Charles. He answered immediately. The HOA has withdrawn access permission. You cannot withdraw access to a public utility easement without notice to the gas company. We received information that your inspection was not properly authorized. I am standing beside the technician whose company issued the work order. That does not give you permission to enter a locked neighborhood facility. Frank appeared at the end of the sidewalk while Maya was still speaking. He looked toward the technician's equipment, then reached for his phone. You told Mr. Callahan to expect an inspection at the east gate, Maya said. I sent him nothing. His notice named the north gate. Charles remained silent for a moment. I suggest you leave before this becomes a trespassing matter. A patrol vehicle arrived several minutes later, followed by Captain Bennett's SUV. 2 uniformed officers joined her. Their batons remained secured on their duty belts. Frank met Bennett before she reached the gate. She's trying to force entry into a restricted utility area, he said. The HOA revoked permission. Bennett turned to Maya. Do you have written authorization? Maya handed her the gas company work order, the technician's credentials, and a copy of the city utility easement. Charles arrived in his Lexus while Bennett reviewed the documents. He carried a separate paper bearing the same work order number. This is the revocation notice, he said. Maya examined it without touching it. The document claimed the inspection had been canceled less than an hour earlier. The city logo was slightly distorted. The reference line used the wrong font, and the contact number belonged to the HOA office rather than the gas company. Bennett compared the 2 papers. These have the same authorization number. The original request was withdrawn, Charles said. The technician shook his head. My office did not issue that cancellation. Charles extended his hand. Then, return the document. Captain, I will have our attorney clarify the matter. Maya spoke, before Bennett responded. Both documents now relate to a police call involving disputed access. They should be photographed, time-stamped, and preserved with the event record. Frank looked at her. You're turning another misunderstanding into an investigation. The documents cannot both be valid. Bennett instructed Cole to photograph each page. She then placed Charles's version in a clear evidence sleeve. Charles's calm expression tightened. That paper belongs to the association. You submitted it as evidence of revoked access, Bennett said. It will remain with the report until its source is verified. Frank moved closer to her. Laura, you know how these matters work. We handled property disputes together for years. Bennett faced him. Mr. Callahan, I cannot disregard a valid utility order because you disagree with the inspection. Frank reacted to the change in address. Mr. Callahan, you are not part of this response in an official capacity. The statement ended the conversation. Frank stepped back, but his expression made clear that he considered Bennett's decision a personal betrayal. The inspection could not proceed because the gate remained locked and no authorized person would provide the new code. The technician documented the obstruction and rescheduled the visit for the following morning. Before leaving, he spoke quietly to Maya. The pressure loss report was updated overnight. The eastern line is deteriorating faster than the original estimate. I would not delay beyond tomorrow. Maya asked him to send that conclusion in writing. Charles heard only part of the conversation. There is still no confirmed emergency. There is a confirmed pressure problem, Maya said. There is a difference. There may not be much difference by tomorrow. After the officers left, Bennett remained beside her vehicle. She removed a peppermint candy from her pocket but did not open it. "Are you building a case against my department?" she asked. "I am documenting a system that allows friendship to determine urgency. You keep requesting records, preserving evidence, and testing information. That is not how an ordinary homeowner handles an HOA dispute." Maya closed her folder. "Would you respond differently if Frank Callahan had never trained you?" Bennett looked toward Frank's house. "He taught me how to remain calm during difficult calls. He also expects that history to influence your decisions today." "That does not answer my question." "No," Maya said. "It answers the one you should be asking yourself." Bennett returned to her SUV without pressing further. That afternoon, Lena called with new information. The tracked HOA file had been opened from a Cedar Grove police device shortly after Charles created the false revocation notice. "The timing is too close to ignore," Lena said. "Someone inside the department knew what Charles planned before the officers arrived. Can you identify the device?" "Not with the records we legally have." "Then preserve the timing and access location." Nothing more. Before Maya ended the call, the gas technician sent his written update. The pressure loss in Pinebrook's eastern line had accelerated. The line might not remain stable through the weekend. The fall social was scheduled beside the community hall the following evening, and the portable generator had already been delivered. Lena identified the police workstation early the next morning. The access record did not reveal the individual file user, but the device had been assigned to Daniel Price, a senior dispatcher who had worked with Frank Callahan for more than 20 years. Maya reviewed Price's public employment history and found that he had remained in Cedar Grove's communications center after Frank retired. He had also attended several department retirement events with Frank and Charles. The connection was significant, but it was not enough to prove misconduct. Maya designed a limited confirmation test that would not create a false emergency or require access to protected information. She called the police non-emergency line from her regular phone and asked a routine question about permit requirements for placing temporary utility marking flags on private property. Price answered. Maya provided only her name, address, and a general description of the permit question. She did not mention Frank, Charles, the gas line, or the investigation. 4 minutes after the call ended, her camera recorded Frank walking onto his porch with his phone. He called Charles and repeated the same uncommon phrase Maya had used with Price. Temporary utility marking flags. Lena listened to the legally recorded outdoor audio twice. "That is confirmation," she said. "It confirms that information from my call reached Frank," Maya replied. "It does not show whether Price contacted him directly or passed it through someone else. You already know what happened. I know what the evidence supports." Maya activated the black phone and issued a sealed data preservation directive. The order required Cedar Grove to preserve dispatch audio, workstation access, priority changes, internal messages, and all files associated with her address. The agency name and her title remained hidden from anyone outside the secure channel. She did not request that Daniel Price be confronted. A premature confrontation could cause evidence to disappear or force Charles to change his plans before the gas line danger had been resolved. Shortly before noon, Officer Cole asked Maya to meet him at the Magnolia Diner. He chose a booth near the back, away from the lunch crowd. A waitress brought coffee and a slice of pecan pie, but Cole left both untouched. "I filed a report through the independent review channel," he said. "I documented the RCC code, the repeated calls, and the pressure I received to treat Frank as a trained observer. That was the correct procedure." Cole lowered his voice. "Price applies the code automatically. Sometimes Frank's calls are transferred directly to a supervisor before the information is verified." "Is RCC included in department policy?" "No." "Then how is it justified?" "People call it a professional courtesy. A professional courtesy should not change emergency priorities." Cole studied her. "Are you investigating the department?" Maya held his gaze. "If someone is using the dispatch center to protect fraud, would you want to know?" "Yes." "Then continue following written procedure. Do not give me confidential records, do not search files outside your authority, and do not warn anyone about the report. You sound like you have done this before." Maya took a sip of coffee. I have seen what happens when people try to correct a bad system with another bad process. Cole finally tasted the pie, although he did not appear to notice it. Frank trained my father. For years, my family talked about him as though he represented everything good about the department. Respecting what someone did in the past does not require ignoring what he is doing now. Cole nodded and left through the side entrance. By late afternoon, conditions near the eastern utility corridor had worsened. The irrigation system activated despite the recent rain, and Maya's backup monitor recorded another sharp rise. A section of pavement near the utility marker had settled farther than it had the previous day. Ranger began barking from Frank's yard. When Frank opened the gate, the dog moved quickly toward the cracked pavement. He stopped there, then turned and walked directly to Maya's front door. Maya stepped outside with the monitor. Ranger returned toward the utility corridor, pausing several times to make sure she followed. Frank came after them with the leash. "Ranger, come back." The dog ignored the command and stopped beside the utility marker. Maya held the monitor close to the ground. The reading rose steadily. Frank looked at the display. "That machine could be inaccurate. It has been checked against 2 other devices. You removed those devices. One was switched off, and another was taken from my property. You cannot prove who did that." "I have not accused anyone of doing it." Charles arrived in his Lexus and parked beside the community hall. "What is happening now?" "The gas reading is increasing," Maya said. "The area needs an immediate professional inspection." Charles shook his head. "I spoke with a utility representative this morning. There is no confirmed emergency." "What was the representative's name?" "I do not remember." "Which office did you call?" "I am not required to report every conversation to you." Maya looked at Frank. "Have you verified anything Charles just said?" Frank clipped the leash to Ranger's collar. "I know Charles. He would not endanger his own neighborhood. That is not verification." Charles told Frank that Maya was attempting to force an evacuation before the fall social. Frank accepted the explanation and began calling residents, advising them to remain calm and wait for official HOA guidance. Maya stepped away and called 911. Daniel Price answered. She reported elevated gas readings, visible ground movement, a prior pressure loss warning, a falsified inspection record, and a possible underground line failure. She requested immediate fire and gas response. Price asked whether the complaint involved the continuing dispute with Frank Callahan. "It involves a gas line," Maya said. "Do not classify this as a neighbor dispute. I'll forward it for utility review. This requires emergency response." "I have your information, ma'am." The line disconnected. Maya checked the incident status through the public call portal several minutes later. Price had classified it as a routine service concern linked to an existing neighborhood dispute. No fire unit had been dispatched. At the same time, Charles emailed residents and warned them that Maya was creating unnecessary panic. Frank went door to door repeating that the HOA had found no reason to cancel the fall social. Ruth ignored him. She began calling residents from the handwritten list beside her kitchen phone. Maya advised everyone she could reach not to start vehicles, operate electrical switches, use gas appliances, or gather near the community hall. Some residents listened and began walking toward the western park. Others remained inside because they trusted Frank's instructions. He confronted Maya near the sidewalk. "You have frightened enough people," he said. "There is no official evacuation order. There is no order because your friend in dispatch downgraded the call. Daniel would never ignore a genuine emergency." "He just did." Frank looked toward Charles. "I have known both of them for years. Loyalty without questions is only obedience wearing a respectable coat. You do not understand loyalty." Maya looked at Ranger, who continued pulling toward the eastern corridor. "Your dog has been warning you for a week. You chose the man who made you feel important." Frank did not answer. Near the community hall, the portable generator waited beside several boxes of string lights. Volunteers planned to begin setup the following morning. Maya checked the sensor again. The reading had climbed. She returned to her kitchen, opened the second locked case, and removed the black phone. Beneath it lay a credential folder marked with a state seal. For the first time since arriving in Pinebrook, Maya no longer had the option of protecting the investigation through silence. The local response system was compromised, The gas line was deteriorating, and residents were following instructions from men who had concealed the danger. She entered 4 digits and waited for the secure connection. A secure operations officer answered after the second tone. "State Command. Provide your authorization." Maya stood at the kitchen counter with the black phone in one hand and her credentials in the other. "My authorization code is Williams 7 Alpha. Activate Emergency Public Integrity Command. Cedar Grove Police Dispatch is compromised." The officer repeated the code, entered it into the state verification system, and asked Maya to confirm her full name and position. "Chief Special Inspector Maya Williams, North Carolina Department of Justice, Public Integrity, and Law Enforcement Oversight Division. Identity confirmed. State the emergency." Maya gave him a concise report. Pinebrook's eastern gas line had experienced increasing pressure loss. Independent monitors had detected elevated gas levels, the pavement had begun to settle, and a licensed technician had warned that the line might not remain stable through the weekend. The Cedar Grove dispatcher had downgraded her emergency call after linking her address to repeated complaints from a retired police captain. "I need the incident transferred to state-supported fire dispatch," Maya said. "Preserve every Cedar Grove call record connected to Magnolia Crest Drive. Freeze Daniel Price's workstation access, and suspend all use of the retired command courtesy code. Do you have evidence that the dispatch system was improperly influenced? I have access records, event histories, recorded priority changes, and confirmation that information from a non-emergency call reached an unauthorized former officer within minutes." "Understood. Do you require state investigators?" "Yes. Notify the Public Integrity Field Team and the State Bureau of Investigation. Do not make overt contact with the HOA president until the evacuation is underway. He has already removed maintenance evidence and may attempt to destroy additional records." The officer confirmed each order. Maya then requested direct contact with Cedar Grove's active patrol commander and the regional gas emergency coordinator. Within minutes, Captain Laura Bennett received an authenticated notification on her department device. The order instructed her to disregard the local dispatch classification, respond to Pinebrook under state coordinated command, and preserve all communications involving Daniel Price, Frank Callahan, and Charles Vance. Bennett called Maya immediately. "Miss Williams, I just received an emergency directive naming you as the commanding state inspector. That directive is valid. You could have told me who you were. Until this morning, the integrity review required passive observation. That condition ended when dispatch downgraded a verified gas emergency." Bennett paused before asking, "What do you need?" "Bring available patrol units to Pinebrook without sirens. Do not let anyone start vehicles near the eastern corridor. The fire department and gas utility are being dispatched through the state center. Officer Cole should begin clearing the homes closest to the community hall. I'll be there in 5 minutes." Frank was still speaking with 2 neighbors near the sidewalk when Bennett's SUV entered Pinebrook, followed by 3 patrol vehicles. A fire command truck arrived from the western entrance soon afterward. Frank walked toward Bennett before she had fully closed her door. "Laura, Maya is creating panic over an unverified reading. Charles has already spoken with the utility company." Bennett did not address him by his former title. "Mr. Callahan, move to the western sidewalk and remain outside the operational area." Frank stopped. "You know my experience. I also know the order I just received." "What order?" Maya crossed the street wearing a plain navy jacket. She opened her credential folder and presented it to Bennett, Cole, and the fire chief. Bennett read the title aloud. "Chief Special Inspector, North Carolina Department of Justice." Frank stared at Maya. "You said you were a compliance consultant." "I said I worked in public safety compliance." That statement was accurate. "You allowed me to believe you were an ordinary homeowner." "I am a homeowner. You decided that living next door entitled you to the rest of my life." Charles approached from the direction of the community hall. His expression remained controlled, although he slowed when he saw the state credential. "Inspector Williams, I believe this response is excessive," he said. "The association has not confirmed an emergency. The HOA is not qualified to overrule a gas company pressure warning." Frank looked from Maya to Bennett. "Whatever her title is, I still know this neighborhood and this department better than she does. Maya faced him. Your retired command designation has been suspended. Your honorary facility access is no longer valid, and the department may not share operational information with you. You have no authority to direct officers or residents. Frank removed his phone. I'll speak with Daniel. Daniel Price's access has been frozen. Then, I'll call someone at headquarters. All personnel have been instructed to follow active command channels. Your former rank does not place you inside them. Frank lowered the phone. Officers who had once greeted him as captain were now waiting for Bennett's instructions. I served Cedar Grove for 30 years, he said. Service deserves respect, Maya replied. It does not create permanent command. A title can open a door, Frank. It cannot make the room belong to you. The fire chief interrupted before Frank could answer. Inspector, the utility team is 6 minutes out. Current wind is moving east to west. Maya opened the neighborhood map on her tablet. Captain Bennett. Establish the command point at the western park. Officer Cole. Clear the homes along the eastern side first. Residents should avoid electrical switches, gas appliances, garage door motors, and vehicle ignition. Use door knocks and verbal instructions only. She turned to Ruth, who had arrived with her handwritten telephone list. Mrs. Carter, can you account for residents who may need assistance leaving their homes? I know who lives alone and who takes morning medication. Work from the western side with an officer. Do not enter the eastern corridor. Ruth nodded and began making calls. Maya instructed Lena to bring the sensor logs and resident checklist to the command point. Lena appeared surprised by Maya's title, but did not stop to ask questions. Frank remained beside Ranger, whose attention was fixed on the utility area. Maya pointed toward the western park. Take Ranger and evacuate. My dog knows that corridor better than any technician. He may have detected the leak before any of us, but he does not need to remain near it. Frank tightened his hold on the leash. You cannot order me off my own street. I can order you out of a verified hazard zone. Ranger pulled toward the eastern line again. Frank looked down at the dog and finally began walking west. Residents emerged from their homes carrying purses, medication bags, jackets, and folders of important papers. Cole moved from door to door, explaining the evacuation without alarming them. Bennett directed vehicles away from the area and stopped one homeowner from using an automatic garage opener. Charles remained near the community hall. I need to secure HOA records, he said. You will leave them where they are, Maya replied. A preservation order is now active. Before he could object, the gas company emergency truck arrived. The lead technician checked Maya's readings and the latest pressure data. We need access to the central valve room immediately. Bennett led the team toward the eastern service gate. The technician entered the code supplied on the original work order. The keypad rejected it. He tried the emergency override, but the electronic lock remained engaged. The gate has been disabled, he said. Maya checked the rising monitor level and looked toward the homes that had not yet been cleared. The evacuation had begun, but the gas crew still could not reach the valve that controlled the failing line. Captain Bennett examined the locked gate while the gas company technician checked the control box. The electronic keypad had power, but it rejected every authorized code and would not respond to the emergency override. The internal release may still work, the technician said, but we need to open the gate without activating the motor. One of the patrol officers inspected the narrow space beside the latch. He removed the baton from his duty belt and looked at Bennett. I can use this as a lever. Do it carefully, Bennett said. No contact with the electrical housing. The officer inserted the baton between the gate frame and the mechanical release. Cole held the gate steady while the officer applied slow pressure. The latch moved a fraction of an inch, stopped, and then released with a loud click. The officer returned the baton to his belt. No one entered until the technician confirmed that the metal gate was properly grounded and safe to touch. Maya checked the monitor in her hand. We still have elevated readings near the community hall. Take only the personnel needed for the valve room. The lead technician entered with 2 crew members, Bennett and Maya. Cole remained outside to continue the evacuation. Near the western park, Ruth checked names from her handwritten list while Lena recorded each household that had cleared the area. Most residents had left their homes, But several older homeowners were still asking whether they could return for medication, pets, or important papers. No one goes back without an officer and fire command approval, Bennett announced over the portable loudspeaker. Do not start your vehicles. Remain in the park until the gas company gives us an update. At the edge of the crowd, Frank held Ranger's leash. The dog refused to face west. He kept turning toward the eastern utility corridor and pulling toward the branch line beside the community hall. Frank looked at Maya. He's focused on that section. Maya studied the gas map. The pressure report identifies 3 connected branches. The maintenance tag that should label the eastern control is missing. Charles removed it, Bennett said. We have the video, Maya replied. The technicians still need to identify the correct valve without relying on altered records. The lead technician spread 2 diagrams across a metal cabinet inside the valve room. One came from the current HOA file. The other was an older city map that Maya had recovered from a public archive. These do not match, he said. The HOA version reverses the eastern and central labels. Maya placed her sensor log beside the older map. The highest readings occurred after irrigation along this route. Ranger also reacted consistently between the utility cover and this side of the hall. Frank heard her from outside the gate. He was trained to follow odor patterns. The technician compared the dog's position with the old diagram and the current pressure readings. The older city map is consistent with the field data, he said. This valve should isolate the eastern branch, but I need confirmation from the regional control center. Maya contacted the state gas coordinator and provided the valve number, map date, pressure history, and current readings. The regional controller verified the original installation record. You are authorized to isolate the eastern branch, the controller said. The technician turned the manual control slowly. His crew monitored the pressure while Maya watched the air quality reading. For several seconds, the number continued rising. Bennett looked toward the community hall. How long before we know? Residual gas may remain in the soil after the line closes, the technician said. We need the source pressure to fall first. A resident volunteer approached the eastern entrance carrying a key to the portable generator. Cole intercepted him before he entered the restricted area. Do not start that equipment. I was only going to test it for tonight's social. One spark could create an ignition source. Leave the key in your pocket and move toward the park. The man complied immediately. The pressure indicator inside the valve room finally began to decline. Maya's monitor held at the same level, then dropped by several points. The technician continued watching the gauges. The line is isolated, he said. The leak is no longer being supplied. No one celebrated. The area still had to be ventilated and tested before residents could return, but the immediate danger was decreasing. Maya stepped outside the gate and called the state command center. The eastern branch is secured. Continue the evacuation order until the utility company clears every structure. Lena approached from the western route. Charles is trying to leave. Maya looked toward the neighborhood entrance. Charles's silver Lexus was stopped near the western gate, where 2 state vehicles blocked the exit. Several boxes were visible in the back seat, along with a laptop bag and 2 external drives. Maya handed Bennett the monitor and walked toward him with 2 state investigators. Charles lowered his window. I am moving HOA records away from a hazardous area. The records were under an active preservation order, Maya said. I have a responsibility to protect association property. You were instructed not to remove anything. He opened the door but remained beside the vehicle. You cannot search my car without a warrant. Maya removed a folded document from her credential case. This order was signed before today. It became active when evidence confirmed that you removed or attempted to remove maintenance records connected to the investigation. Charles looked at the document. You did not have probable cause when you moved into this neighborhood. The order is based on financial records, falsified certifications, deleted safety notices, dispatch access logs, and the video of you removing the maintenance tag from the valve room. His expression changed when she mentioned the video. You recorded a secured HOA facility? The camera covered the public approach and visible entrance. You entered the room after receiving false location information that had been sent to 3 different parties. Only the HOA office received the correct location. Charles looked toward Frank, who had followed at a distance with Ranger. You told me she was going through the east gate. Frank said. I told you what I had heard. You told me she was manufacturing a crisis. I never ordered you to make those calls. Maya instructed the investigators to inventory the contents of the Lexus. They photographed the boxes before opening them. The first contained HOA ledgers and contractor invoices. The second held insurance correspondence and printed gas company warnings. The laptop and external drives were placed in protective evidence bags. After the gas company declared the community hall safe for limited entry, Maya asked Frank and Charles to meet inside with Bennett and the investigators present. Charles sat at one end of a folding table. Frank remained standing until Bennett asked him to take a seat. Maya arranged the evidence in front of them. She placed the falsified inspection report beside the original gas company warning, then added the tracked documents, the false access revocation, the dispatch records, and photographs of the maintenance tag Charles had removed. Charles looked at Frank. You made the calls. You pressured the officers. You watched her house. None of that came from me. Frank turned toward him. You gave me every piece of information. I discussed neighborhood concerns with a former police captain. What you chose to do was your decision. Maya placed printed messages between them. Charles had repeatedly told Frank when Maya would receive technicians, what equipment she had installed, and what claims he wanted verified. He had avoided direct commands, but the pattern was clear. He used your need to control this neighborhood, Maya told Frank, but he could only use what you were willing to give him. Frank looked down at the challenge coin in his hand. Maya then faced Charles. You used Frank's calls to make every warning from my address appear unreliable. You delayed the inspection, altered the records, and allowed residents to gather beside a failing gas line. Charles asked to contact his attorney. That is your right, Maya said. He was escorted to a separate room to make the call, while investigators continued processing the evidence. Frank remained at the table. Did this neighborhood nearly suffer because of me? Maya did not give him an answer that removed his responsibility. Several people made choices that brought Pinebrook to this point. Yours were among them. Outside, excavation equipment entered through the eastern gate. Ranger lay near the western sidewalk, with his head resting on his paws. For the first time since Maya had moved into Pinebrook Heights, the dog was calm. The gas beneath the street had been contained. The damage inside the records, the department, and the neighborhood had only begun to surface. The investigation continued after residents were allowed to return to their homes. Gas crews remained in Pinebrook Heights for several weeks, replacing the eastern line and testing every connected branch. The road beside the community hall was opened, repaired, and marked with new inspection seals. Portable detectors remained outside several houses until the utility company confirmed that the soil and indoor air were safe. No one had been injured, but the official findings made clear how close the neighborhood had come to a serious emergency. Charles Vance had received 3 written warnings about the deteriorating line. Instead of authorizing the repair, he transferred most of the maintenance fund to a consulting company controlled by his brother-in-law. He then used an expired contractor's name and a retired engineer's signature to create a false inspection record. Investigators also recovered the maintenance tag Charles had removed from the valve room. It was found inside one of the boxes in his Lexus, along with the original gas company notices he had claimed never to receive. The Mecklenburg County prosecutor filed charges related to financial fraud, falsified safety records, destruction of evidence, obstruction of an official review, and concealment of a public hazard. Funds connected to the missing maintenance money were frozen, and the company controlled by Charles's relative was placed under audit. Charles stopped attending HOA meetings. His attorney advised him not to speak publicly, and temporary administrators assumed control of Pinebrook's records and finances. Daniel Price was removed from the Cedar Grove Dispatch Center while investigators reviewed his workstation, calls, and internal messages. The evidence showed that he had repeatedly applied the unofficial retired command code to Frank's complaints, shared restricted information, and changed priority levels without written justification. Most seriously, he had downgraded Maya's verified gas warning because Frank and Charles had described her address as the source of repeated neighborhood disputes. Captain Bennett reviewed the final dispatch report in her office with Maya. I allowed the courtesy system to continue, Bennett said. I never approved it in writing, but I knew it existed. You did not create every part of it, Maya replied. That does not excuse my silence. No, it does not. Bennett accepted the department's corrective findings and helped remove every retired command designation from the dispatch system. Honorary access cards were canceled. Internal information could no longer be shared with former officers, and every change in emergency priority required a written reason linked to an active policy. Officer Cole joined the group responsible for creating a new review procedure. If one caller made 3 or more unfounded complaints about the same person or address, a supervisor would examine the pattern before assigning additional police resources. The process did not prevent anyone from reporting a genuine emergency. It prevented reputation and familiarity from replacing verification. Frank's old privileges ended completely. He returned his honorary access card and lost his informal advisory role. Dispatchers were instructed to treat his calls like those of any other resident. He could no longer contact active officers for internal information or use his former rank to influence a response. The investigation did not erase his years of service, but it established that past service gave him no present authority. Frank also agreed to reimburse part of the cost of the unnecessary police responses and participate in structured community accountability sessions. During the active review, he was required to communicate with Maya only through official meetings. He continued living at 1844 Magnolia Crest Drive. For the first time since his retirement, no officer called him captain during official business. 3 months after the evacuation, Pinebrook residents gathered in the auditorium of Cedar Grove High School. The community hall remained under repair, and the temporary HOA board wanted the meeting recorded and open to every homeowner. Maya stood at the front beneath her full title, Chief Special Inspector Maya Williams, North Carolina Department of Justice, Public Integrity and Law Enforcement Oversight Division. Frank sat in the last row. His challenge coin remained in his pocket. Maya explained the gas investigation, the dispatch failures, and the new oversight measures. She did not discuss classified parts of the state review, but she gave residents a clear account of what had happened and why the warning system had failed. My authority did not make the conduct against me improper, she said. It was improper when I was only the woman living next door. Justice is not fair when it depends on who answers the phone or whose name the dispatcher recognizes. Captain Bennett approached the microphone after her. Our department allowed professional respect to become an unwritten privilege, she said. That privilege affected our judgment and delayed a legitimate emergency response. We are responsible for correcting it. Cole acknowledged that his respect for Frank had made him hesitate to question the calls sooner. I thought loyalty meant protecting the reputation of someone I admired, he said. I understand now that loyalty to the public requires us to question anyone when the facts demand it. Ruth spoke next. Public trust is lost quietly, one favor at a time. It must be rebuilt the same way, one honest act at a time. Frank remained seated until the moderator asked whether anyone else wished to speak. He slowly walked to the microphone. My name is Frank Callahan, he began. He did not mention his former rank. I believed my experience gave me the right to decide which concerns deserved attention. When Maya would not answer every question I asked, I treated her privacy as evidence that she was hiding something. I used old relationships to make officers respond to my suspicions. He looked toward Maya. Charles gave me information because he knew I wanted to feel useful. I chose to trust him instead of verifying what he said. Ranger recognized the real danger, and I kept insisting the danger was Maya. Frank paused before continuing. My calls helped make her real warning look unreliable. I was wrong, and being manipulated does not remove my responsibility. He apologized to Maya, the police department, and the neighborhood. Maya did not offer immediate forgiveness. An apology is a door, she said. Responsibility is what walks through it. 6 months later, Pinebrook Heights operated under an independent HOA board. Contractor licenses were verified before payments were approved. Maintenance reports were available to residents, and infrastructure spending required recorded votes. The fall social was finally held in the Western Park. Ruth brought chicken and dumplings. Cole arrived with pecan pie from the Magnolia Diner. Lena demonstrated the new online portal where residents could review meeting minutes, budgets, and safety inspections. Frank helped arrange chairs and carry food without giving orders. When anyone asked for guidance, he directed them to the event coordinator. Ranger spent most of the evening beneath Maya's magnolia tree. His red collar had been cleaned, but its brass nameplate was still faded. As daylight ended, porch lights came on throughout Magnolia Crest Drive. The new gas monitor near the eastern sidewalk showed a safe reading, and the replacement utility cover carried a current inspection seal. Frank stopped beside Maya while Ranger examined the repaired section of pavement. The dog sniffed once, then lay down. "Quiet night," Frank said. Maya looked toward the neighbors, sharing food, checking on one another, and speaking without anyone trying to control the conversation. "No," she replied. "A trustworthy one." Pinebrook had not found peace because Frank lost his influence. It found peace because that influence could no longer exist without review. Safety records were open, emergency decisions followed written rules, and no resident's voice carried more legal weight because of an old title. Beneath the magnolia tree, Ranger closed his eyes while the neighborhood continued talking around him. The lesson from this story is simple. Real safety does not come from control, reputation, or old authority. It comes from honesty, accountability, and the courage to question a system when something feels wrong. Frank believed he was protecting his neighborhood, but his unchecked influence nearly placed everyone in danger. Maya proved that true justice does not need to shout. It needs patience, evidence, and people willing to do what is right, even when standing alone. Thank you for staying with us until the very end of this story. Your time and support mean more to us than you may realize. We would also love to hear your thoughts. Was the story clear and engaging? Were there any parts where the pacing, transitions, or narration could be improved? Please share your honest feedback in the comments so we can continue telling better stories. And if you have a meaningful, surprising, or inspiring story of your own, please consider sharing it with our channel. Your experience may become the next story that brings hope, truth, or an important lesson to someone who needs to hear it. This video is a work of fiction created with the assistance of artificial intelligence. All characters, events, and situations are not real and do not represent any actual people or true stories. The content is intended for storytelling and emotional illustration only.